All right, so today we're going to finish up our last section on our trace evidence. Again, we've covered a number of topics ranging from fibers in textiles to soil to hair, um, to goodness, gosh, what else have we covered? Lots of different things, right? But regardless, this is going to be the last little bit for this particular part, just to make sure that we kind of do our due diligence in making sure we address each of the different types of trace evidence. Remember that for much of our trace evidence, we're looking at class characteristic type of stuff. We try to identify individualized evidence if there is something, so individual characteristics that we could use to identify in certain unique situations. But by and large, much of the trace evidence is going to fall under the category of class evidence. So again, as I've mentioned several different times, just one more piece of the puzzle that can be used to help uh, get a better picture, better image of what transpired at a particular event, who was or was not there, based on the presence or absence of certain pieces of information. And so that's what we're going to look at this last section as well. So looking at casts and impressions, specifically as it's going to relate to footwear and then vehicles as well, and teeth, right? Dentition as well. But when you look at the types of impressions that can be made, there are three types that you can basically expect to see. And we'll revisit these when we get to our section on fingerprinting as well, uh, just because of the fact that they're very similar between the two. All right, so the first is going to be that of patent impressions. Patent impressions are visible to the naked eye. You don't need to do any specialized treatment or anything like that to be able to know that yes, there is in fact something there. You can look with your own eyes and be able to see yes, there is something there, and potentially it could be of forensic value to us. So it's probably a piece of evidence that should be collected. So again, this is going to be something that's going to be left in uh, dust or blood, paint, any type of surface in which something has already been deposited, and then someone came in contact with that. Whether we are talking about footwear, whether we're talking about fingerprints or whatever, or even footprints as far as that goes. It maybe if somebody doesn't have shoes on but is walking barefoot. Again, same type of idea, but it's been deposited on a surface, and then another individual or an individual or multiple individuals have come in contact with that surface that has that material that's been deposited and subsequently leaves an impression that we are then able to see. So that's a patent impression. The next is going to be that of a latent impression. Latent impressions you do not know are there. In scanning a tabletop, you can guess that there are probably fingerprints present on that tabletop, but by and large, probably not visible. Maybe if you get lucky looking at it from the side and somebody had a really greasy fingerprint or something, you might be able to see that they are there. But in latent impressions, that is not going to be uh, obvious to us. So you're going to have to use some type of technique to make those impressions visible. And so there's a number of ones that we're going to look at, whether you're using some type of dusting powder or an electrostatic process where you charge the particle or charge um, basically a sheet of plastic and then allow it to adhere to dust particles, or whether you're going to use some type of chemical that allow materials to show up. There's lots of different means and ways that this is going to be achieved. But latent impressions require the scientist to do something to make those impressions visible. And finally, the third one is going to be that of the plastic impressions. It is a three-dimensional imprint that is going to be left in some type of material that is probably relatively soft. Whether it's concrete that has not set up, obviously concrete that has set up that wouldn't work on, but concrete that is not set up, mud, soap, snow, you get the idea. All of those are different surfaces in which an impression could be left. Now, the biggest concern, and really you could make this argument with any of the patent, latent, or plastic impressions, environmental conditions can be a real concern. Oftentimes, we're going to be talking about outdoor environments, and even if we're not talking about outdoor environments, even indoor environments, maybe where you have a lot of people that are moving in the area, there's always the risk that those impressions either end up being lost or distorted in some way. So it's going to be very, very important that with any of these, one of the first things that's going to be done is very accurate documentation and photographs of these particular impressions so that they can be maintained. That's going to be a very, very important part of this. Again, class evidence is going to be the most common. However, with many of these, if there is some unique identifying feature, then that would allow you to be able to individualize that particular impression to a particular individual or to a particular shoe that left that particular impression, or a tooth bite pattern or something like that. So again, it most of the time going to be class evidence, but can on occasion be individual evidence as well. All right. So as we look at shoe evidence is pretty valuable in a number of ways. In that you can ascertain lots of information. You can tell the approximate size of the foot of the individual wearing the footwear, provided that the shoe fits or the boot fits the individual correctly. Possibly the weight of the individual. Heavier individuals are going to leave heavier footprints than those individuals that aren't as heavy, oftentimes. The type of job that they might have. So again, an individual that probably is working in the construction trade isn't going to be wearing some type of fancy loafer or boat shoe or whatever else you want to call them, right? They're probably going to be wearing some type of work boot. Um, if you have someone that is of a certain economic status, you're probably not going to find them in some ragtag, nasty old running shoe. They're probably going to be wearing nicer types of footwear. So again, there's lots of information that can be gathered just based on footwear, and again, that can help investigators kind of narrow their search. What exactly or who exactly might they be looking for? So this particular picture, I included it just really because when you look at its value, it's really important. Um, this is from the murder of Nicole Brown Simpson, the former wife of O.J. Simpson, and one of the things that they had found, that investigators had found, was that the individual that made the impressions in all of this blood, again, notice this would be a type of patent impression, sorry, because they had walked through blood that had been deposited on the surface of the tile. Um, but the individual had worn a certain brand of shoe based on the tread pattern and that they had observed. Uh, at O.J. Simpson's trial, they argued that he did not own that particular style of shoe. Well, what they found later is that there were pictures of him wearing the same style of shoe as was believed to have created these particular prints, and so created a little bit of a concern in terms of what they had found. Additional information that can be found from footwear evidence, information about a person's gait, whether they're walking or running, whether they have a limp or some type of injury that might be affecting how they're moving. You can tell how many people there are. Again, unless everyone wears the exact same shoe, the exact same kind of shoe, they've all been worn in the exact same way, there's going to be differences. Even if you have two people wearing the exact same tennis shoe, the way they wear them, the way that we all walk and move is different. And so as a result of that, they would create slightly different patterns. If you had someone that was being carried potentially, because again, that extra weight is going to make for a greater impression by those footwear. And again, how people moved about a particular area. So, did they move into an area, stay for a long period of time, moving around, maybe looking for something, and then did they leave? Did they walk in and walk out? Again, all of that could be information that would be very valuable to an investigation, helping to explain or determine what occurred at a particular location. So when you go to collect shoe evidence, obviously, if the shoes are present or if the footwear is present, you want to make sure that you collect that. If you have a suspect, you want to collect their footwear. Um, even if the footwear doesn't look right, again, you want to collect it. You don't know what other pieces of trace evidence might be present. Now, there's a number of cases where a particular individual has committed a crime, footwear has been cleaned, and then investigators get to look at it, and they'll find microscopic pieces or microscopic droplets of blood that have soaked into the weave of the fabric of the tennis shoe, right? Or of the boot. So that ends up being very, very important. So you want to collect those. Again, they're going to go in their own paper bag or box, and then obviously it'll be labeled and taped and all that good stuff to ensure its accuracy and validity. Again, with everything, as we've seen, you always want to photograph it, and the same is going to be true in terms of footwear evidence as well. So you're going to photograph it before you do anything with the impressions themselves. So you want to take pictures of the impression. The way that that's going to be done is you want to take the first picture from above the impression. You want that impression to fill the entirety of the viewfinder of your camera. And what that will do, again, is gonna give you the greatest ability to distinguish characteristics and features of that impression in the event that something happens to that impression as you begin the process of preserving it. So it becomes very important that you're very thorough. Um, in addition to getting that photograph from directly above the impression, you're going to take multiple images, multiple pictures from different angles. You may have to use different lighting or flashes because, again, as sun shines, it can create glare and make it very difficult to be able to get good pictures. So it's going to be very important that you are able to get good quality, clear pictures. You want to include a ruler and identifying label. You're going to want to identify on your scene sketch where the impression was. Again, you're going to want to include what direction was the impression moving or was it facing so that, again, you can identify maybe an individual was standing in location A and then you have footprints that allow or show that individual walking to location B or running or whatever the case might be. So, again, you want to photograph all of that and document all of it in your crime scene drawing as well. If you have impressions that are very faint or hard to see, you can use a very light coating of a contrasting spray, simply to make that pattern stand out more, to make the impression more visible um, in your photographs and obviously to the naked eye as well. So that's another a process that can be used to aid the scientist. Now, when you go to lift latent prints, when you go to make those prints that are not, or those impressions that are not visible, when you go to make them visible, again, there are several different techniques that can be used. But again, you want to do this prior to anything being moved, people being admitted to the area, things like that. And with latent prints, again, because you don't know that they are there or didn't know that they are there, it's going to be very important that you test various surfaces relatively quickly because they can be destroyed or distorted very quickly. Okay, so different things that you can use: luminol, uh, dusting powder, which is very, very useful, the electrostatic dusting process that I had alluded to previously, and then gel lifting as well. And that one's kind of a unique one. But with luminol, luminol is going to be used to make blood present, or blood that was present, maybe that's been cleaned up. It will make it visible for a short period of time. It will glow in the dark, um, under UV light, and so it will be visible to be able to be photographed at that particular time period. So again, you'll want a ruler and lighting and all of that good stuff, so that you have or are able to best collect those pictures. Dusting, it's a similar process to using fingerprints. Again, different types of dust, different colors of dust, different styles of dust, whether it's metal shavings, talc, charcoal dusting powder, whatever it might be. There are blues and silvers and grays and blacks and all different kinds of colors. So a lot of that will be dictated by the surface that you're working on, as well as the environment that you're in. Sometimes you simply can't dust. If you have a damp kitchen floor, obviously you're not going to be able to dust very well. That's not going to be a very worthwhile process, unfortunately, under those circumstances. So there are limits to dusting as well. The electrostatic lifting, as I mentioned, you're going to apply a charge to that plastic lifting film that then is laid over top of the latent print, and it will pick up any fine particles that had been stuck to or adhered to the pattern of tread on the bottom of the shoe. They then stick to that plastic because of the charge that's been applied. Then you put a covering piece over top of that, and that then creates the impression that is visible then to the naked eye and can be photographed and measured and all of those types of things. So again, very useful. Um, gel lifting. Gel lifting is another process whereby um, you can collect a particular impression. With that, with your gel impression, you're going to use again a certain type of powder. Um, that will adhere to the impression itself. You then take the gel lifter, so it's a gel layer sandwiched between two layers of plastic. One layer of plastic it's permanently stuck to, the other layer it is not. So you peel off one side, lay that down over top of your powder, and then you're able to peel that gel off of that surface. It's sticky, but not sticky enough that it would stick to even paper. So you're able to remove it from a number of sources. Once you have it lifted, you put your plastic piece back over top of that, and then you're able to photograph that evidence and obviously allow it to be maintained as part of your cataloged inventory. Okay, so again, several different ways to be able to collect these. And if you need to cast your material, so maybe you've got a footprint in the soil and you want to be able to cast that, or maybe in some sand, again, it's going to vary depending upon the type of material that you're going to want to use. But one of the things that can be done initially is a very light coating of hairspray so that the impression doesn't fall apart as you pour in your casting agent. And then you could use plaster of Paris is a very common one. There are others as well, depending upon where you're casting that. There's a material called dental stone, which is going to harden even faster than plaster of Paris, but it can be used in snow, right? So even in snow, you can collect an impression. You cover it with a very fine layer of wax. That wax then hardens, and then you are able to pour in your casting material, and it makes a mold of that impression. So again, lots of different ways to be able to um, collect this particular type of evidence. When you start looking at footwear and being able to analyze it, there is a software that is called Soulmate. They have over 38,000 different shoe and sole designs that you can then kind of search for. Now, there are criteria that you can enter to help narrow your search initially. You don't just start scrolling through 38,000 different pictures. You're going to enter information about the shape of the tread pattern on the bottom or a particular design. So, for example, if you've got a Nike shoe that's got the swoosh on the bottom, you're going to only search Nike footwear patterns. And then from there, maybe it's got circles. Well, then you can add circles as one of your search criteria, so on and so forth. You get the idea. So again, this is a very accurate way of being able to help identify uh, where that pattern might have come from, what type of shoe might have made it. And then again, if you can find the individual that owns that shoe, that can help tie that individual obviously to the crime scene. So tread patterns become very important. Again, It can be individual evidence depending upon the wear patterns. Maybe you've got a rock that's been stuck in there, or who knows? Maybe it's a bald spot from you running or just walking on that area for so much. That can be something else that could be used as well. All right, so the next thing in this casts and impressions is tire evidence, because that's another thing that casts can be made of and impressions can be made of. Um, but tire impressions give lots of pieces of information. Again, you can tell the approximate speed that an individual was moving or that a vehicle was moving, the direction that it was moving, whether or not there was a loss of control based on skid marks and yaw marks and things like that, and sometimes even the type of vehicle depending upon the tires. Now, with tires, because tires can be moved from vehicle to vehicle, and there's lots of different manufacturers, and those tires can be put on lots of different vehicles. That's not always a dead giveaway, but again, can be something that can be useful. So, two main things that these forensic scientists are going to take a look at. The first is going to be the tread pattern, and that's going to be the ridges, all right, the high points, and then the grooves, the low points on the tires. Those are going to be the two really big ones. In addition to that, what you'll also find is the rib. The rib is that middle portion of the tire. So, like down here in this picture, the rib would be that middle part of the tire. Um, but they're going to use that and the different measurements to identify the type of tire that produced that particular pattern. Sometimes you can identify the model of a car, but like I said, because of the commonality associated with tires, that's not a guarantee. You can also determine how that impression was made to determine how that car was being driven at that particular time period. Again, not a dead giveaway, but still very, very useful. So you got patent prints, latent prints, and plastic prints. Still the same in tires as what we did in footwear just a second ago. All right. So again, lots of different things that individuals can drive through that will leave impressions. Sometimes manufacturers are going to leave oils and different types of residue on tires as a protective covering. And while they may not be visible to us, they can be made visible, which is a good thing. And then you've got plastic prints as individuals drive through mud or sand or snow, grass, whatever. You get the idea. Some type of soft surface that's going to leave that three-dimensional shape. Again, unique characteristics are going to be identified in the examination of the tires or of the tread patterns that are recovered. And then if they find a suspect vehicle, they will ink each of the tires and allow that tire then to be driven over a piece of paper or cardboard for at least 3 full feet, if not more, to make sure that they get the entire revolution of that tire. Now, in this picture, you can see that they've actually segmented the tire up so that they can identify the different regions. So as that tire spins, right? So you're getting the transition. So you would have marked on your paper, here is where four starts, here is where four ends, here is where five starts, here is where five ends, so on and so forth. So again, very useful in terms of being able to show, listen, I know this tire produced this particular tire print because there is this defect in this spot on this particular tire. Again, that would be a way to individualize that evidence. So, in terms of identification of a vehicle, uh, oftentimes the make and model are going to attempt to be determined using the tire pattern. But because again of the commonality of tires and the fact that they can be put on many different vehicles, that doesn't work very well. So oftentimes what they will use is or are those tire patterns in conjunction, excuse me, with the tire width as well as the wheelbase. The tire width is the measure from the center of one tire to the center of the other tire across from it, and then the wheelbase is the center of the uh, front axle to the center of the back axle, which would equivalent be in the center of the front tire to the center of the back tire as well. The other part that's going to be useful is the turning diameter, turning radius. There is a number of databases that have the different vehicles and their approximate wheelbase and turning diameters as well. And so, again, scientists can use that to help them figure out what vehicle may have produced the particular impressions that are being observed. All right. In terms of accident reconstruction, because that's where a lot of this comes into play today, these crash reconstruction efforts are designed to help clear up any questions that may exist. Because again, they can show whether or not someone was or wasn't at a crime scene, but or who was or who was not at fault. Because again, oftentimes with crashes, things are happening so quickly that it's very difficult for the driver to sometimes recall exactly what took place, or what they thought took place isn't exactly what occurred because things happened so quickly. So, in terms of what you're going to get, the first thing is going to be skid marks. Okay, the distance of the skid mark, how long that skid mark is going to tell you how long those brakes had been applied. It's going to tell you the approximate velocity of that vehicle because you're going to see how long did it take for that vehicle to come to a stop. All right. And so again, that proves very useful stuff. The absence of skid marks is also very telling. So let's say you've got maybe an accident involving a drunk driver or a driver that's driving under the influence and a driver that was not. Oftentimes you'll see skid marks only by the individual that is not under the influence. The individual that was under the influence oftentimes doesn't hit their brakes. They don't. They're delayed in terms of their reaction time. We'll talk about that later in this course as well. Another piece of information that you get is or are the yaw marks. Yaw marks, if you're familiar with the term drifting as it pertains to vehicles, that's basically what this is. As a vehicle is traveling in a curved path faster than the vehicle can handle, those tires then begin to skid or slide sideways. As they do so, they cause a melting not only of the rubber, but sometimes even of the roadway, and then obviously you're going to get smoking and squealing that would be part of that as well. So again, as people do, like a great example would be doing donuts, right? Where they're going to spin in that circle very, very quickly, smoking, burning rubber onto the asphalt and vice versa, and obviously making that squealing sound as they do so. So those are your all marks. And then finally, the last one are going to be the tire scrubs. Tire scrubs are going to be produced by tires that basically are either overloaded um, as a result of weight, maybe in a truck that's carrying more than what it's supposed to be, or they've been damaged in some way, or obviously as a result of the impact itself. And these are going to have some unusual characteristics in terms of their curved orientation and irregular width. Okay, but again, very very useful there. So there is, let me move this here real quick just so you can see this. There is something called the TreadMate software. Okay, TreadMate software. Let's just put this over here. TreadMate software is a database that is maintained by the same company as the Soulmate that we looked at with footwear. And in it, you will find a large category or catalog of tire patterns. Again, just like we talked about with shoes, you can start by putting in certain patterns associated with the tire, and that will eliminate choices very very quickly, help narrow it down, and then you can look at very specific patterns to see does that match the particular type of tire that we have that's part of this particular activity. The last piece of information here is looking at dental evidence and dental impressions. Um, Oftentimes, this is going to be considered individual evidence. That's what we're trying to do is individualize it to a particular person. This is one that today is called into question about as much as anything, because there have been a number of errors that have been made based on bite mark evidence, and so this is one that really needs to be used best in conjunction with other pieces of evidence to make it the most reliable and most useful. So that ends up being very important. But when you're looking at teeth evidence, there are 20 baby teeth that we all start out with. Obviously, as we age, those teeth fall out and are going to be replaced with 32 adult teeth. The age at which each of the different teeth erupts is fairly well documented. It's not carved in stone, but it is gives you a pretty limited window in terms of when the different teeth will appear. Again, that'll be a topic that we'll discuss later on as well. And again, you can use the different patterns to estimate ages of individuals in the event that you're using dental impressions to maybe identify a body or whatever the case might be. So the teeth patterns are going to vary from person to person because our jaws are different. Where the teeth are at are different. The way they grow in is going to be different. Our nutrition is all different. All of those things are going to influence how those teeth grow and what they look like as they grow into the mouth of the individual that has them. So because of that, um, dentition evidence can be pretty useful. So you can use it to identify remains. So there's a story in the news currently of a gentleman that was driving a truck. Truck hit something, burst into flames, and unfortunately, the individual died. So they had to identify the body using dental records. So they would have teeth recovered from the burned up vehicle, and they thought they knew who the individual was, so they could go to the family and again request dental records from the dentist from any dental work that had been done to be able to identify that individual. So identification of remains is very, 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 very common. And then the other way is the use in profiling or identification as it pertains to bite marks. Okay, which is what this particular picture is designed to show. Uh, in terms of collecting this type of evidence, you're going to want to photograph any type of bite mark that is present on the individual immediately, because with bite marks, bruising can distort them significantly. The fact that skin stretches as it's bitten is very, very important, and that also is going to influence the reliability of your bite mark evidence. So that's one of the reasons that people kind of call this into question a little bit more. But you're going to want to have a ruler. Um, so again, you can measure certain measurements within the confines of that mark and so on and so forth. That becomes very, very important. And then the last piece of that is if you have a bite on skin or even on clothing that has gone through to the skin, you want to collect any type of DNA evidence that might be present. So you're going to definitely want to swab that area, collect it, and then send it away to be analyzed for DNA evidence. All right, so that wraps up all of our trace evidence information. Hopefully, you found some of this to be at least a little bit interesting. I know there's a lot of it, but hopefully by breaking it up, it makes it a little bit easier for you to kind of go through and take a look at. If you have any questions, make sure you please reach out to me. Otherwise, I will talk to you soon.